Part 30. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 291. Successfully guarding the rear of the defense line and annihilating all the sneak attack Chronos Legion soldiers, only 2 of the 10 anti-aircraft tracked vehicles were eliminated. There was even one that gained a lot of experience and was successfully promoted to the 3-star elite. The Allied Hyperspace Legionnaires can be said to be representatives of high technology. The total cost of equipment and training of soldiers is very expensive. The total price of a Legionnaire is 3 times that of an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle. But this time the Allies used more than 20 Chrono Legion soldiers for 2 anti-aircraft crawler vehicles. I have to say, this is just like exchanging 20 fighter jets for a few tanks of the Wolf Squad. It's a blood loss. But there is no way. This is how war in the world of Red Alert works. No matter how cheap a unit is, its threat cannot be underestimated if it is used properly. No matter how expensive a unit is, it will be difficult to be effective if the command is not good. After destroying these Chrono Legion soldiers, the rear of the defense line was safe. The remaining 8 anti-aircraft tracked vehicles did not take the opportunity to be lazy. They turned around and joined the front-line battle, hiding behind the Apocalypse tanks and Rhino tanks, specifically bombarding the Allied forces. Soldier. In this battle, the stalemate between the two sides was severe, with casualties on each other, and it was impossible to produce a result in a short period of time. The addition of these anti-aircraft crawler vehicles can be said to have greatly eased the pressure on the coalition forces. Wang Ling had been concentrating on bombarding the frontal troops of the Allied forces, and had no extra energy to observe the rear of the team. Now, after seeing these anti-aircraft crawlers, he instantly knew the battle situation in the rear. He couldn't help but feel happy, and he just wanted to say hello. However, unexpectedly, a conscript next to him who was full of health and doing full output was suddenly hit and died on the spot. Having been in the Red Alert world for so long, he has experienced too many battles, large and small. When Wang Ling saw this scene, he immediately thought of a unit that gave him a lot of headaches: snipers. Isn't it? A full-blooded conscript was killed with one shot. Judging from the situation at the scene, only a sniper could do it. Thinking of this unit, Wang Ling gritted his teeth and quickly checked the electronic map. Sure enough, he found 2 multifunctional infantry vehicles standing alone behind the charging Allied troops. The appearance of these 2 infantry vehicles has changed. They are obviously each carrying a sniper, and they are now hiding in the distance and firing cold shots. While Wang Ling was observing, the 2 sniper infantry vehicles had each fired 2 shots in a row, and 4 more conscripts were shot dead instantly. Damn! Why are these bastards from the Allies so sinister? Seeing this, Wang Ling became anxious. He cursed angrily and then hurriedly shouted, "Captain Laming, the plan has changed. There are multifunctional infantry vehicles with snipers behind the Allied troops and in front of the Prism tank group. Give up for now. Light Prism tank, take the lead in dealing with these 2 bastards, otherwise our troops will suffer heavy losses." Sniper. When they heard about this unit, not to mention the Thunder, several other captains were also startled. This battlefield ghost is simply a natural infantry killer. He hides in the distance and keeps firing cold shots, so no one can predict the next shot. Who will be killed? Clear. Laming was also a battlefield veteran and an elite captain. He knew his priorities in an instant and hurriedly issued temporary orders to the tank regiments that had been dispatched. These tank corps were naturally the first troops sent out to intercept the Allied light Prism tanks on their own after Wang Ling's suggestion. They are led by an elite Apocalypse tank, followed by 2 ungraded Apocalypse tanks, and 5 Rhino tanks, 2 of which are elite level. Now, taking advantage of the large forces of both sides fighting, they are quietly bypassing the battlefield to stop the attack. Those lagging behind are approaching the army of light tanks. After receiving Laming's temporary order, these tank regiments suddenly stopped, changed their targets midway, and directly attacked the two sniper infantry vehicles. Although the sniper infantry vehicle showed off its power in front of the infantry, it could only give in front of the tanks. The tank regiment rushed in front of it without giving it time to react. After a few booming shots, the two multifunctional infantry vehicles directly hit it. It was blown up, revealing the sniper hiding inside. But the sniper obviously had no resistance and was directly bombarded to death by two elite Rhino tanks. These two battlefield ghosts were finally removed in advance, and the pressure on the coalition forces suddenly dropped. But it's not over yet. After the tank corps succeeded, they didn't stop, and directly formed a group to attack the rear of the Allied forces, where a dozen light tanks were getting closer and closer. If these light prism tanks are allowed to approach and fire light prism rays at large troops, the number of casualties among the troops will inevitably increase exponentially, and their destructive power is no worse than that of snipers. It was precisely for this reason that Wang Ling proposed in advance to send tanks to intercept the light tank. Now the Allied forces are exchanging fire with the coalition forces at the front. Although those light tanks are menacing, they are actually isolated and helpless. It is a good time to take action. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the coalition tank corps turned around and killed them. Soon they ran into the prism tanks head-on and started bombarding them. The Allied forces on the battlefield of this decisive battle were not as rigid as before. Once they identified a target, they would fight to the end. When they observed the approach of the tank corps, they immediately changed their targets and took the lead in attacking these tanks. A light prism tank has very limited damage to tanks, but there are more than 10 light prism tanks, including 2 elite-level tanks. If these numbers are added together, it is a quantitative change that leads to a qualitative change. It only took one round of bombardment. An unleveled Rhino tank in the tank army exploded, leaving 2 with half health and 1 with residual health. Even the Apocalypse tanks in the rear were affected. Fortunately, enough tanks were dispatched, otherwise we wouldn't be able to touch the light tank, let alone any interception plan. The remaining tanks didn't dare to waste time. They hurriedly opened fire while the second shot of these light prism tanks was accumulating energy, destroying 3 of them in an instant. At this time, the second firing line of the light prism tank had also exploded. Out. They are indeed the light tanks that make Wang Ling even fearful. When there are more of them, their destructive power is simply eye-catching. However, fortunately, the Apocalypse tanks led by the coalition forces were strong enough. After several rounds of shelling, they successfully completed their mission and destroyed all the prism tanks. However, the losses of its tank army itself were not small. Only 1 Rhino tank was left with only half health left, and the others were all destroyed. The Apocalypse tanks did not explode, but 2 of them were knocked out of half of their health. This is still a tank corps. With their thick armor and powerful firepower, they will suffer such losses compared to the Prism tank corps. If they are allowed to attack the large coalition forces, how destructive will they be? Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 292. When Wang Ling first came into contact with this game, he randomly selected Allied forces as a faction. After playing enough, he liked to make a batch of light tanks. At this stage of the game, if he did not encounter any targeted units, then you can almost walk sideways and wipe out the 7 major power bases almost effortlessly. It was precisely because he had used it so many times and knew how terrifying it was when these things were combined that Wang Ling deployed a special plan. Otherwise, when these more than 10 light Prisity tanks arrive at the launch position, they will start bombarding the coalition forces in large areas from a very long distance. The consequences will be terrifying just thinking about it. There is no need to worry now. Although the tank army also suffered a lot of losses, it was worth it if they could successfully eliminate more than 10 light prism tanks. The Chrono Legion soldiers were annihilated, the sniper infantry vehicles and the prism tank group were also destroyed in advance. All the Allied forces, large and small means, were wiped out. The only ones left were these large units fighting fiercely on the frontal battlefield. Compared with the previous powerful lineup of the Allies, this is already easy to deal with. Led by the elite Apocalypse tanks, the remaining tank corps completed the blocking task without stopping, and then launched a fierce attack from the rear of the Allied forces. On the Allied side, the equipment and training costs for the Allied soldiers were twice as much as those of the conscripts. They were not pure cannon fodder. There were also many tanks and vehicles in the ranks. However, more tanks followed the rear of the large army. As for the Allied tank corps, the primary target is these Allied tanks. Although the HP was basically incomplete, mostly at half HP, it could not withstand the fierce firepower of the elite tanks, and they attacked from behind. After a few shots, the Allied tanks were caught off guard on the spot, and a large number of tanks exploded. At this time, these Allied tanks, waiting for an opportunity, also successfully diverted their hatred and began to turn around and attack the Allied tank corps. After all, these Allied forces came from other battlefields. It was inevitable that there would be some elites in the tanks. As a result, the tanks of both sides started bombarding each other. It was a lively fight. Various shells rumbled and exploded, and almost every sound was loud. With the appearance of the popping sound, all kinds of sounds came out in a concentrated manner. It was simply dark. The result, however, was not ideal. The three major armies of the Allied forces have joined forces. Even if the Prism tanks are blocked in advance and there are some mixed among the soldiers, the number of remaining tanks is also quite large, far more than the Alliance's tank corps. Even if Elite Apocalypse returns again, even though they were strong, they couldn't defeat this group of tanks at all, and eventually the tank corps was wiped out. However, the Allied tank army was not happy either. It was violently attacked by the tank army and eventually lost 67 out of 10 tanks. It was a serious loss of vitality. As for the frontal battlefield, the stalemate has continued until now. The Allied troops have been pulled out of their teeth and their morale has plummeted. As a result, the coalition forces seized this opportunity and counterattacked quickly. The large forces opened the way with tanks, and the soldiers followed and assisted, rolling over all the way, and then cooperated with the infantry. The firepower of the steel torrent was so strong that the Allied forces could not resist it in this state, and they were quickly defeated. As a result, they were counterattacked by the Allied forces. This lasted for a long time, and finally all the Allied encirclement and suppression troops were wiped out. Clean. At this point, the Allies' revenge plan has officially failed. No one has bothered to study how long this battle lasted. The sun had already risen slightly in the early morning sky, and its soft light shone on the many soldiers on the battlefield, instantly scattering them. A warmth quietly emerged from the coldness in my heart. We won. Ha ha ha, we won, we won. Oh. 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 Ha ha ha, brothers, you did a great job, you won the battle. There were so many Allied troops, but we won in the end. Pretty. After the battle was won, all the soldiers on the battlefield shouted excitedly, expressing their inner excitement as much as possible. What's more, some people cried with joy and cried loudly, "It's so good to be alive after a big battle." Boom. Hateful. In the Allied General Headquarters, a certain 5-star general saw this result and punched the controller hard, scaring all the adjutants and staff around him to tremble. Trash, what a bunch of rubbish. How many troops were sent out for such a coalition team? But in the end they lost, and the coalition troops are still jumping around. What a bunch of rubbish. Thanks to the fact that we have much more people and tanks than the other side, we humming lost the battle. Who is in charge of this encirclement and suppression? Ah! Is this level worthy of being a commander? After the defeat, the 5-star general was furious. His roar could be heard in the entire command post, as if a bomb might explode at any time. All the adjutants and other workers nearby were not at all interested. Dare to answer anything, for fear of getting burned. Of course, other commanders with similar ranks to the 5-star general were not so afraid. After one of the 4-star generals stared at the electronic video for a while, he frowned and said, "General Bob, calm down, I will fight this time." After watching the whole process, our commanders certainly made some mistakes, but this is not the main reason. The enemy we face is very cunning, more cunning than what we have seen before. Humph. No matter how cunning or clever, no matter how many tricks you have, it's useless in the face of absolute strength. To put it bluntly, these commanders are stupid. The 5-star general known as General Bob was still steaming with anger. But the 4-star general laughed at himself. Yes, I admit this, but are our enemies so weak? They have been in a stalemate with us for so long, and there is no obvious advantage in the battle for hegemony. Such an enemy can't be underestimated. Humph, General Bob snorted coldly. He couldn't refute anything, but he was obviously still angry. The 4-star general slowly began to analyze. The area at the three-way intersection is easy to defend but difficult to attack. After suffering losses, the commanders also very smartly changed their strategies and gathered together to attack in a detour, causing the coalition forces to lose their geographical advantage. Moreover, they also dispatched soldiers of the Chrono Space Corps to attack from far and near. There are also snipers and light tanks in the team, plus more soldiers than the opponent. Logically speaking, it should be enough to sweep these coalition forces. However, this coalition force happened to be inside. There is a very cunning commander who uses tricks to destroy all our advantages. This kind of enemy cannot be underestimated. After hearing this, General Bob took a few deep breaths, suppressed the anger in his heart, and asked, "Then which coalition base do you think this commander is from?" The 4-star general said, "In my opinion, it should be the coalition base numbered 15. The battlefield was originally very stalemate. It was almost a tug of war between us. No one could take advantage, but those two after the base arrived, they sent troops directly without settling down and destroyed one of our bases under construction as quickly as possible. They were discerning, courageous, and most importantly, very cunning." Oh! General Bob's eyes were a little gloomy. He mobilized the electronic map and zoomed in on the city where the 15th and 16th were located. After a while, he snorted coldly, "The chariot factory has just been built, so you dare to send troops to attack? Okay, although the outcome of the war is the most important, the reputation of the Allies cannot be tolerated by them. Give me the order and focus on taking care of these two coalition bases. I want to see how strong they can be." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 293. Yes, a deputy immediately responded, and then used the radio to contact the major base command posts on the battlefield. Next to General Bob, the 4-star general asked, "Take care of them?" "General Bob, with your temper, shouldn't you immediately send a large army to destroy those two bases? Why do you tolerate this tone now, already?" General Bob gritted his teeth and replied, "Of course I want to take over those two bases immediately. But I can't do that now. After the war, those two bases have made great contributions, and the defense force in the initial stage of construction is very weak, and they will definitely be taken care of by other bases. The more troops are sent to guard, the more it is like this, the more difficult it is to attack by force, otherwise it will be a thankless effort, so we can only endure it for the time being." General Bob is still thoughtful. The 4-star general took the opportunity to pat the horse. "Ha ha ha, well done." Unlike the anger on the Allied side, after the battle, the Allied side was extremely happy. In the number 15 coalition base command post, Major General Lee Wiki smiled so proudly that he even had an arrogant attitude. I didn't expect that. We have just rebuilt a few buildings here, and Wang Ling has already stirred up the storm on the battlefield. With the help of reinforcements from other troops, we completely wiped out all the Allied encirclement and suppression troops. Ha ha ha, why am I so relieved by this achievement? Even Major General Luo Er also sent congratulations on the radio. Old Lee, did you see the battle situation on the electronic map just now? Haha, all the Allied encirclement and suppression troops were wiped out. In addition, the previous push in Allied base, this is a great achievement. Although it was done by your wolf team, we also have assistance here. When it comes to discussing merits, don't forget us. It's easy to talk about. This is a joint achievement between our two families. We will never forget it. That's fine. But Lao Li, let's not get too complacent too early. The credit has been paid, but I'm afraid we are also being taken care of by the Allies. With our current construction and defense, I'm afraid it won't be that easy next time. Got it? TCH, you can think of it, but others can't think of it? Don't worry, our weight on the battlefield is quite heavy now, and other bases will definitely send reinforcements to help defend. My dear, how did you fight this battle? Looking at this comparison of combat power, I thought I was going to lose, but in the end I actually won, and the Allied forces were completely destroyed. Not only the coalition base on the 15th and 16th, but also the commanders of other bases on the battlefield were also wondering and applauding. The combat effectiveness of these 6 troops is good. It has been a tug of war before. According to the nature of the Allied forces, if a base is suddenly destroyed, they must immediately counterattack, not to mention destroying one of our bases. In the end, we should also destroy the attacking troops, but it's good now that the attacking troops have not been destroyed, and all their encirclement and suppression troops are dead. But hey, a good death will relieve your anger. This battle was beautifully fought. It's rare to see the Allies suffer such a big loss. It's worth celebrating. All the encirclement and suppression troops were wiped out. Well done. However, now, the base on the 15th and 16th will have to be taken into consideration. The Allies must try their best to destroy them. This is not possible, it must be we have to guard them. Quickly, send a team of tanks to base number 15 and number 16. The Allies will definitely be waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. We can't let them succeed. You underestimated them. Is the captain leading the team from base number 15? If I remember correctly, they were just in place yesterday. The base construction is still in the early stages, but they dare to send troops to attack the Allied base. Such a thing happened on the battlefield. In the general command base and command post, the commander naturally stayed up late to pay attention to the situation on the battlefield. It can be said that he had witnessed the whole process of what the Wolf team had done, and now he was amazed. This is too courageous. We just fought, and we won. The tug of war was disrupted. Not only that, even the encirclement and suppression troops sent by the Allied forces were wiped out. Talented people. 10. Who is the commander of base 5? Li Weiqiang? I didn't see it. This guy is quite capable. Although this operation was Wang Ling's idea and he was in charge of the whole process, Wang Ling belonged to the number 15 Allied forces base after all. With this name, the coach obviously did not think of Wang Ling and only thought it was Li Weiqi. The Major General came up with a strange plan. Not only him, but also other commanders in the General Command Post did not think of Wang Ling, except for the number 1 person, Yuri. When they first met, Yuri had tried it out and discovered that Wang Ling was not simple. Afterwards, although Wang Ling changed his arms and became only a half-hearted member of the psychic army, not everyone can get the benefits of arms training. Since then, Yuri has paid more attention to Wang Ling, so he came up with the idea of recruiting Wang Ling. Looking at Wang Ling in the electronic map, Yuri smiled vaguely. This person is indeed not simple. He can stir up troubles as soon as he arrives on the battlefield. Such a person, working under the command of Li Wiki, is a waste of talent. Only I can do it. Discover his potential. Just wait, sooner or later, you will be my subordinate. Oh. 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 Ha ha ha. On the battlefield, the 6 major armies were still cheering. They couldn't help but be excited. In this battle, they annihilated nearly twice their number of Allied troops. This record spoke of glory throughout the decisive battlefield. Having personally participated in this glorious battle, how could they not be excited? However, the cost of this glorious battle was also not small. All members of all the troops were fighting desperately, and even cooperated with Wang Ling's cunning arrangements and the previous interception plan, but this battle after the battle, the total number of members of the 6 major armies was reduced by more than half. Fortunately, this number is shared evenly among the 6 major armies, and most of those who died in the battle were unranked recruits. If they were concentrated into a certain team, then 3 of the 6 major armies would be expelled. Naturally, there were a lot of injured, and all the captains of the 6 major armies were injured. Long Gang was even hit by a phantom tank before. If it weren't for this guy's tenacious vitality and the large army killed the phantom tank in time, I'm afraid there is no such person in the police world anymore. The comrades who were still joking around before the war were reduced to a pile of withered bones after the war. Under this sense of disparity, many people in the army could not help but shed tears after cheering. Of course, more people sat down on the ground directly after cheering, breathing heavily and looking tired. Speaking of which, this group of people stayed up all night, and this night they were either nervously preparing for war or fighting with the Allies. During the battle, I didn't feel anything bad, but after the battle, I let go and the feeling of fatigue quickly emerged. The current 6 major armies are indeed very tired. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 294. Chapter 294 Exhausted. As the representative of the seriously injured, Long Gang was in a particularly embarrassed state now. His uniform was almost stained with blood. The uniforms of the soldiers who had simply been mobilized were already red, so they didn't look that ferocious. Moreover, as the captain of the Steel Team, Long Gang has long been a 3-star elite warrior. The wounds on his face are now healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It will take him a while to heal and he will be active again. However, before that, Long Gang's pain and fatigue were real. When many officers and soldiers showed signs of fatigue, Long Gang also sat down on the ground with a bang, breathing heavily. However, his breathing voice revealed pain, and the trembling was obvious. Even the hands holding the Babisha submachine gun were shaking so much that he could barely hold the submachine gun. "Captain Dragon, are you okay? Captain Dragon, how's it going? Hey, you can't die, can you?" Although several other captains were also injured, they were much better than Long Gang. Seeing Long Gang's appearance, they all felt a little uneasy. Although Long Gang was seriously injured, his will was still as strong as steel. There was a bit of coldness in his trembling voice. "Don't worry, you won't die. This battle was fought so hard. These damn allies are so powerful in combat, it's not bad. With the recovery ability of elite warriors, as long as they don't die, it won't be a problem." When others heard this, they felt relieved. Lei Ming also sighed. "Yes, this battle is really the most difficult battle I have ever fought. The number of allied troops is so dense, and they also have snipers and light tanks. To be honest, seeing that formation, I'm all a little scared." "Ha ha ha, is it that exaggerated?" But Zhang Yang smiled. "The allies are powerful, but we are inferior. In this battle, we wiped out nearly twice as many allied forces as us. No matter how many they were, they would still be wiped out in the end. Xia Tian sneered, "It sounds like you have a lot of credit. Isn't it that Captain Wang's layout is sophisticated enough?" Zaha also agreed, "Yes, let the infantry hide behind the tanks, send anti-aircraft crawlers to destroy the hyperspace core soldiers, and the interception plan. Our victory is inseparable from these layouts." "Captain Wang, this is awesome." "It's okay," Wang Ling laughed. Even Zhang Yang didn't refute this, he just shrugged his shoulders and didn't dare to say anything about doubting Wang Ling and the Wolf team's record. A few people had just reached this point in their conversation when Lei Ming suddenly became serious. He was originally sitting, but he quickly stood up and made a military salute in one direction. After a while, he solemnly replied, "Yes, sir." Seeing his posture, Wang Ling immediately guessed that this must be a message sent by radio from the commander of his number 7 base. However, after all, the bases they belong to are different and the frequency bands are different. Wang Ling is not sure what order the commander gave at this time, but a simple guess is that now that the battle is over, they should be dispatched to return to the base. After the thunder, Xia Tian, Zhang Yang, and Zaha also had similar reactions one after another. Even Long Gang gritted his teeth and stood up with his seriously injured body. Seeing this, Wang Ling gave a slight bitter smile. Looking at it like this, it seemed that it was time to say goodbye. We had just had some war and friendship with them and were about to separate. To be honest, I was really reluctant to part with them. However, in fact, it was somewhat beyond Wang Ling's expectation. Lei Ming then patted Wang Ling on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Captain Wang, we will have a period of cooperation in the future. The commander just gave me an order, the Lightning team will follow you back to base number 15 and 16, and will remain stationed there until it is fully developed, and some reinforcements will even be sent to supplement the soldiers and tanks of the Lightning team." Oh, Wang Ling was a little surprised when he heard this. He had a lot of clever ideas, but as a player after all, he rarely thought about and understood the overall arrangements. The support from other bases was also beyond his expectation. Not only Lei Ming, but also Yan Tian, Zhang Yang, Long Gang, and Zaha received this kind of order, and they would all return with the Wolf team to help garrison the city. Although base number 15 and number 16 had just arrived here not long ago, the Battle of Wolf team had already attracted enough attention. This decisive battle had never been heard of on the battlefield. During the construction period, reinforcements from other bases were required. Always there to help with the garrison. Ha ha ha, that's a good relationship. Guys, let's cooperate more in the future. Wang Ling was overjoyed after hearing what they said. Under this kind of order, comrades will not be separated in a short time, and there are more reinforcements. If stationed, the base will be safer. The soldiers of the 6 major armies are now very tired, but this place is far outside the influence of the major coalition bases. After the battle, they do not dare to rest here directly. They can only return to the 15th and 16th as soon as possible. No base. After having the order and plan, the 6 major armies did not delay any more. After a short rest and the soldiers regained some strength, the army began to retreat. After this battle, there were quite a few seriously injured people in the team. In order to take care of these seriously injured people, Wang Ling specially proposed to put all the remaining anti-aircraft crawlers in the team into action and take the lead in bringing all the seriously injured people back to the base. Others, on the other hand, planned a safer road and marched quickly. To say that this decisive battlefield is indeed too big, we retreated from this safe road and set off in the morning. When we rushed back to the base, it was already pitch black. Those seriously injured who were the first to return, the elite ones, were now resting, while the recruits and veterans were taken to the hospital by several anti-aircraft crawler vehicles. Of course, this is not a field hospital in the rear of the battlefield. The area of the decisive battlefield is so large that cities have it, so there is no shortage of hospitals. All ordinary people have completed the transfer, but some doctors and nurses have been left behind to treat soldiers who were injured in the war. As for the large army that had just arrived, they stayed up all night, fought continuously, and marched all day. Now they were all very tired. They were received by King Xiaoping. After a few brief greetings, they were quickly divided into groups. Guard the territory and let them rest. The wolf team was no exception. They didn't even arrange for a guard to be on duty that night. After returning to their territory, they quickly set up their tent and hurriedly went to sleep. After fighting and traveling for so long, not sleeping for 2 days and 1 night, even Wang Ling, who had undergone intermediate level strengthening, was a little overwhelmed, and the other soldiers were even more exhausted. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 295. Of course, other staff fell asleep normally, but as a player, Wang Ling took the opportunity to contact Uncle He and return to the interdimensional system transfer station. Well done, kid. You went to fight before you even had your feet firmly on your feet. Is this the rhythm of grabbing points? Uncle He said with a playful smile. The entire Red Alert world was created by Uncle He. Of course, Wang Ling had no intention of being careless about this Uncle He, and nodded simply, that's right, the points you can get at your fingertips will be in vain if you don't take them. And it's not all. In order to gain points, I don't want to let the Allied base grow and destroy it in advance so that we can be less stressed in the future. After saying this, Wang Ling shook his head, no more words, Uncle He, please help me count the points. I am very curious about how many points have been recorded in this battle. Good. Uncle He had no need to refuse this request, so he tallied up the statistics naturally. Since the last point count, you have survived in the Red Alert world for a total of 281 hours, and accumulated 281 survival points, hit-killed 543 Allied soldiers of all types, including 108 1-star veterans and 84 3-star elites, a total of 6,810 points, shot down 20 Allied fighter planes, 600 points, annihilated 124 Allied tanks of all types, including 23 1-star veterans, 16 3-star elites. 3,030 points, destroy 11 Allied defense buildings of various types, 550 points, destroy 10 main Allied buildings, 1,000 points, destroy an Allied command post, 500 points. In addition, the decisive battle of the blockade, because your deployment has achieved a major victory, you will be awarded an additional 500 points, plus your previous remaining 15,813 points, now you have a total of 29084 remaining points. After the statistics were completed, Uncle He still gave a symbolic congratulation, boy, more than 10,000 points have been credited to your account at one time. This speed is good. Congratulations, you are one step closer to advanced redemption. To be honest, after this battle, more than 10,000 points were directly recorded in the account, which is indeed a lot. However, Wang Ling frowned after hearing this. Uncle He, this data is not quite right, is it? Oh? What's wrong? Uncle He asked curiously. Wang Ling replied, if we only killed one Allied base, it would be normal to score less. But this time we blocked so many Allied encirclement and suppression troops in a row, the scores are much less than I expected. It turns out I'm stuck on this matter. Uncle He smiled and shook his head, you seem to have forgotten the rules I said before. The income from these points must be you or your troops to kill the enemy in order to count. But in the blocking battle, in addition, are those 5 reinforcements your people? Wang Ling was speechless. He had not reviewed these rules for so long and almost forgot them. The Allies' large-scale encirclement and suppression troops were indeed large in number, but after all, the Wolf Squad was fighting together with the reinforcements. These 5 squads had taken away so many points that after such a battle, he, Wang Ling, could only earn 10,000 points. Thinking about it, he was a little depressed, and Wang Ling's face naturally looked a little ugly. However, he was open-minded, and soon returned to normal, smiling relievedly. Forget it, there is no need to rush the points. Their 5 support troops helped me a lot. If it weren't for them, the wolf squad would be in danger. Okay, just grab some points. That's a good idea, Uncle He said calmly. After the points were tallied, Wang Ling no longer had any need to stay here. He informed Uncle He and returned to the real world in the blink of an eye. Lying on the bed in the dormitory, Wang Ling felt groggy now. He had been fighting at high intensity for so long and had not slept for 2 days and 1 night. Of course, he was also sleepy. However, tonight he did not rush to sleep. Instead, he silently settled the accounts in his mind. I have earned more than 13,000 points, and now I have close to 30,000 points left in my hand. I spent a total of 35,000 to switch arms, exchange for intermediate enhancers, and arms experience books, plus other zeros scattered. The total points I have accumulated now have exceeded 65,000. Advanced redemption requires 100,000 points to unlock, and now the difference is less than 35,000. 35,000 points. For a big battle, at most 3 games should be enough. I'm looking forward to the advanced enhancement. It's just that this battle is not something that can be fought casually. In the future battlefields, the possibility of making mistakes will become smaller and smaller. A hasty attack will only have the opposite effect. These 35,000. Forget it, it's useless to think so much now. Anyway, we are on the battlefield of the decisive battle. Sooner or later, we will have a chance to get these points. By then, we will unlock the advanced redemption, and according to what Uncle He said, we should be able to be resurrected. Is Xiao He dead? Not only Xiao He, but also the instructor can be resurrected? Even if he can be resurrected, this grudge must not be forgotten. Will that bastard agent Tanya be on the battlefield of the decisive battle? Ahem. I said I didn't think much about it, and I thought about it so much. I'm so sleepy when I go to sleep. When he is alone, he just likes to ponder, and Wang Ling is no exception. In just a few minutes, he has filtered through the issues he is most concerned about in the world of Red Alert, and then turned around. I fell asleep comfortably. Not long ago at school, he set a record in the physical fitness test and intimidated hundreds of gangsters into quitting the school. These 2 things, even though Wang Ling had tried his best to keep a low profile, still made him do it to a certain extent. There was a fire in the area. It's easier to talk about deterring the army of ruffians. It caused many students to speculate on Wang Ling's identity. It's not a big deal. But if the results of the 1,000-meter long-distance running are widely circulated, what will happen next? The trouble is not small. Most people just listened to that incident as a story and did not take it seriously or believe it. Wang Ling can still maintain his original home life in school. The day passed step by step, and there wasn't much else going on. Wang Ling went out to buy some snacks on the way and found that the school gate had been replaced with a stronger retractable railing gate. I have to say that those ruffians were quite efficient in their work. After returning to the dormitory, he rested until night. After washing, Wang Ling lay on the bed again and went to the Red Alert world. The last time he left, the large force had just returned to the base. The wolf team was extremely tired. When Wang Ling opened his eyes now, he could hear snoring coming from the camp. Wang Ling had long been accustomed to this sound and didn't find it noisy. He just shook his head and smiled while subconsciously observing the electronic map. The wolf squad made such a big splash on the battlefield this time, destroying an allied base and wiping out all the encirclement and suppression troops together with the other 5 teams. This was enough to make the Allies hate the Wolf Squad and even the entire 10 Corps. There is a coalition base on the 5th and 16th, and they may be dispatched to annihilate them at any time. This can be seen from the 5 troops stationed here specifically. It is not impossible. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 296. On this battlefield, as long as they can win, they will do anything they can. Things like night attacks are really commonplace for both sides. When Wang Ling was sleeping in the Red Alert World, the allies who were attacked at night were the army woke me up. The time now happened to be at night, and while the 6 armies were fighting and traveling long distances, it was only natural for the Allied forces to launch a night attack. Moreover, it is estimated that the Allies are already thinking about this place. Once a night attack is launched, the scale will definitely not be small, and Wang Ling cannot be careless. However, when observing the electronic map, Wang Ling found that the Allied forces were very quiet. Except for the small-scale battles at the bases in the first few days, they were generally standing still, as if they had never experienced any previous defeats. "You're quite calm," Wang Ling muttered. "This is a good thing for the coalition base on the 15th and 16th. If the other party is not in a hurry for revenge, there will be sufficient construction time. The most important thing is that the Allies are unwilling to take action, so Wang Ling will probably be able to sleep well tonight. The Allies suddenly make a move midway, and there is still time to get up temporarily." Thinking of this, Wang Ling finally lost his scruples, yawned and then fell asleep peacefully. On the Allied side, they really would not move if they said they would not take action. This night, with other troops guarding them, the 6th Squadron slept particularly comfortably. When they opened their eyes again, it was already early morning. Waking up, gathering, morning jog, and eating breakfast are all normal steps. Everyone is very regular and step by step. While eating breakfast, Wang Ling also had time to observe the base. This night, Li Wiki, Major General Luo Zhao Pingwang, Raoski and other deputies naturally took turns to rest, but the bug engineering soldiers were working all night. After a whole night of hard work, the 2 bases have been rebuilt. Radars have been installed, and a total of more than 10 sentry guns have been built in all directions. Now the engineers at the 2 bases are rebuilding them. It looks like they are combat laboratories. To judge whether a base is strong or weak, the quantity and quality of troops are definitely the top priority, along with the size of the base and the number of defensive buildings. But Wang Ling has always felt that apart from those, the combat laboratory is a heavyweight indicator to judge whether a base can have combat effectiveness. On the battlefield, the combat laboratory is very important. Only when the combat laboratory is built, the base technology will be further developed, with more powerful defense buildings and more powerful troops. Once the combat laboratory is built, the corresponding base will basically take off gradually as long as the commander is not too stupid. Now the 2 major bases are already building this combat laboratory. I believe it will soon develop here and have a powerful combat capability that the Allied forces have to treat with caution. Wang Ling was quite pleased with this. After looking at his own base, Wang Ling took an overall look at the entire field and checked the 2 forces. Before base number 15 and number 16, there were several bases that had just arrived here. With this extra day of development time, the combat laboratory has now been built, the magnetic storm coil has also been erected, and the entire base has begun to take shape. Scale. The overall situation with the Allied forces was almost the same. Several bases were guarding some remote corners that were easy to defend and difficult to attack. They were developing rapidly. Wang Ling observed them carefully. It was difficult to make a surprise attack, so he didn't look any further. The construction of other Allied bases has basically been completed. There are crack generators blocking the view of the electronic map. It is impossible to see the scale of their interiors. However, they are generally quiet and there are no special actions. Even the local war last night it's over, and the outcome is unknown. The huge decisive battlefield is now surprisingly quiet. The two camps are facing each other. Although the swords are tense, no one is sending troops for a while. After reading this, Wang Ling happened to finish his breakfast and casually walked around the city. On the 15th and 16th, the troops at the base basically dispatched a lot of troops to the surrounding high-rise buildings, and the 5 support army troops that arrived yesterday are now also on guard in their respective areas. Wang Ling passed by at will. All the soldiers and captains he saw were basically saying hello to him. In these two bases, Wang Ling's popularity is quite high. As he turned around, he saw Xiaoping Wang, who was yawning and moving his body. It seemed that he had just come out of the command post, and he felt like he had finished the night shift. After Wang Ling saw him, he greeted him naturally, "Hi, brother Zhao, how was everything last night?" Wang Ling, Xiaoping Wang yawned again, and then said, "On the whole, there is no problem. The allies are also surprisingly sensible and did not attack overnight, but..." "But what?" Wang Ling asked. King Xiaoping replied, "Those shameless allies sent 7 or 8 spies over at night. When they meet together, they can form a soy sauce squad." Wang Ling couldn't help but laugh for a moment. 7 or 8 bases sent out spies together. They all gathered together. The spies were having a meeting. What was this? Have these spies been dealt with? Relatively speaking, this was the question he was most concerned about. Xiaoping Wang was a bit dumbfounded. Since everything has been discovered, how can we not deal with it? It is a coincidence that the group of spies came from different directions and gathered together to enter the city. It happened that a police dog patrolled by. In the end, a police dog wiped out all the spies. I was stunned to see it on the video. Good guy, this police dog has done a great job, it's incredible." After a brief chat, Xiaoping Wang did some activities and returned to the command post. Wang Ling also directly found the wolf squad and took them to an intersection on the edge of the city. Yesterday's battle was too fierce. The wolf squad was severely damaged. It lost dozens of soldiers and some tanks were damaged. However, the overall combat effectiveness was still there. After getting into position, Wang Ling quickly deployed and evenly distributed the soldiers to the surrounding areas. In the tall building, the tank was hiding not far away this time and was on alert. While on alert, Wang Ling was also constantly observing the electronic map. On this day, both the Allied and coalition forces were basically relatively restrained and rarely used troops. The most active ones were the mining trucks at major bases. This battlefield for the decisive battle can be said to be vast and rich in resources, with numerous oil fields, many of which have not yet been occupied, and mines one after another. There are even some gems and minerals mixed in, which are valuable. War, especially a stalemate and protracted war, is all about economy and money. All major bases attach great importance to the accumulation of funds. A large number of mine carts are being transported frantically on the battlefield of the decisive battle. Fortunately, the battlefield is large enough, and the two armies are far apart. The mine carts will not cross the border in a short period of time, and everything is relatively peaceful. Of course, this situation will not always be so peaceful. Wang Ling was observing when he suddenly saw 5 or 6 tanks each dispatched from the two coalition bases number 2 and number 4, driving out of the base in a hurry. The posture seemed to be rushing towards others. The chrono mining vehicle went there. Different dimension red alert world. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 297. On this decisive battlefield, once the troops of both sides fight, the scale is very large. Even if it is a small-scale conflict, it can almost keep up with the large-scale general attacks on previous battlefields. Compared with this large-scale battle, the more than 10 Rhino tanks sent by the two coalition forces are really not enough to see. Apart from attacking the Allied mining trucks, I am afraid there is no other possibility. In fact, as Wang Ling expected, these dozen Rhino tanks were much faster than ordinary infantry. After rushing out of the base, they rushed towards the two mines for more than 2 hours and finally arrived. At the destination, there happened to be some space-time mining trucks working there. When they met, they started working without saying a word. The Allied space-time mining vehicles are very fast and have the ability to move through time and space, but apart from being able to run over some ordinary infantry, they have no combat effectiveness at all and can only be bombarded by these rhinoceros tanks. Not to mention that, the time travel mining vehicle was like a glutton. Even when it was bombarded, it was still mining minerals stubbornly. However, when the remaining health of the vehicle was about to be exploded, it suddenly moved through time and space. Back to base. After failing to capture this mining vehicle, the Rhino tanks were not discouraged and turned to attack another one. But there is a saying that goes well, the world is as dark as crows. This time travel mining vehicle is also a piss poor, it mines despite the bombardment, and after the remaining health, it directly escapes back to the base with a time travel movement. The two mining vehicles were all gone, and these Rhino tanks seemed a little unwilling. They turned around and seemed a little impatient. Then they began to change their targets, heading towards other mines, aiming at other mining vehicles. For a long time, these dozen or so Rhino tanks were performing on the entire battlefield. Most of the Allied mining trucks captured in the major mines escaped back to the base, but there were also some unlucky ones who were captured. Explode. After a long time like this, the Allies couldn't stand it anymore and sent multi-purpose infantry vehicles, grizzly tanks, and rocket pilots to encircle and suppress them. After a firefight, they were annihilated. That's not all. It seemed that just for revenge, these original encirclement and suppression troops also began to attack the armed mining trucks of the coalition. After a period of time, they blew up 5 or 6 vehicles. Then the corresponding coalition bases dispatched encirclement and suppression troops, attacked those Allied troops, and then turned around and attacked the Allied mining vehicles. The coalition and Allied forces are really tit for tat. It's a stalemate. Even fighting a mining truck is a tug of war. You punch me and I'll kick you. If you steal dates from us, I'll catch you. And some bases even directly sent troops to garrison near the mines. According to the style of play of both sides, this decisive battle will probably be unprecedentedly long-lasting. There are very few people who can directly blow up an Allied base like Wang Ling did, because it is too difficult. After watching the electronic map for so long, Wang Ling was also a little uninterested. Since the sneak attacks from both sides were only small-scale and only targeted mining vehicles, he felt at ease during this period. However, just when he exited the observation state and planned to take a short rest, a strange sound suddenly came from the base in the square in the center of the city, which sounded as if the machine had stopped spinning. As a veteran player of Red Alert, Wang Ling reacted immediately. There was a power outage in the base. It was fine at first, but when the power suddenly went out, Wang Ling subconsciously thought that he was under attack by an enemy or a spy had broken into the power plant, and his face instantly turned ugly. Fortunately, on this decisive battlefield, some technologies are common to all major bases, and radar signals are one of them. With the help of radar signals from other bases, the electronic map can still be used. Wang Ling hurriedly looked at the electronic map again. Out of habit, Wang Ling looked at the corner of the electronic map at first glance and did not find any countdown numbers. Obviously, this power outage was not what spies claimed. Then he quickly took a look around the base and found that there were no traces of enemy troops in the base. Even the teams stationed around the base didn't look panicked, so it certainly wasn't an enemy attack. After eliminating these two factors, Wang Ling immediately discovered the two newly built combat laboratories in the base, and then he laughed awkwardly. The emotional load was too large and the power supply was no longer available. Speaking of which, this is also a situation that is often encountered in games. After all, the total output power of a power plant is only that large. If it exceeds this limit, of course it cannot be supplied. This is normal. Wang Ling also often encountered. Now that Wang Ling is nervous, it is purely because of the continuous battles. He is too sensitive on the battlefield. And this problem is actually very easy to solve. Now there is a combat laboratory. As a unique technology of the coalition, the technology of nuclear reactors, that is, nuclear power plants, has also been mastered. As long as a nuclear power plant can be built, the power of the base can be fully supplied, and it can make a lot of money. But the problem is that this is a decisive battlefield, and large-scale battles may break out at any time. Once the nuclear power plant is exploded, the power of the explosion is no less than that of a small nuclear bomb. It is too dangerous. Without absolute confidence, it cannot be built and can only be expanded. Increase the number of common power plants. As expected, General Luo Er and General Li Wiki also had the same idea in the base. The engineering troops in the base quickly built a large-scale power plant, and the base's power supply became abundant. After the power problem was solved, what was left was the defense facilities. The engineering troops from the two bases were divided into two groups and built maintenance factories at their respective bases to provide some protection for various tanks. On the other hand, anti-aircraft guns were built in the base. In this red alert, although the role of fighter jets has been greatly weakened, if an unscrupulous commander is caught using fighter jets very skillfully, it will cause extremely serious losses to the coalition forces, and there will also be many rockets flying. The soldiers are watching eagerly. With the large number of ground troops, the importance of anti-aircraft guns is even greater than that of magnetic storm coils. Of course, the tank factory is not idle either. It is continuously assembling Rhino tanks, anti-aircraft crawler vehicles and Apocalypse tanks to supplement the base tanks. In addition, some terrifying robots are coming out. Occasionally, one or two armed mining trucks will drive out. In addition to the large number of mining trucks brought from the previous battlefield, there are mining trucks coming in and out almost all the time, constantly mining and transporting various types of mining vehicles. Minerals provide sufficient financial guarantee for the development of the base. Even that night, supplementary soldiers from the other 5 teams came here one after another, adding a bit of deterrence to the base. At this point, base number 15 and number 16 has also embarked on a virtuous cycle of development. Both the combat and defense forces in the base have increased with the tide, and they are becoming more and more powerful. During this period, the Allied forces surprisingly did not come to attack, which gave the base a lot of time to develop. However, this kind of peace will not last long. When Wang Ling returned to the real world to rest for a day, he was woken up by the sound of an alarm when he went to bed that night. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 298. Wang Ling has been fighting on the battlefield for so long, so he certainly doesn't have much courage, but precisely because he is on the battlefield of this decisive battle, he is also extremely sensitive. In addition, the alarm was so sudden and urgent that Wang Ling was naturally frightened and woke up. Usually when an alarm sounds in the base, it means there is an enemy attack. Wang Ling became nervous immediately after waking up, and immediately started watching the electronic video subconsciously. His reaction speed is quite fast. From waking up to calling up the video, it only takes a few seconds. After a cursory observation, Wang Ling found that the ore refinery in the base was on fire, and the health bar on the top of the building had turned red. However, the attacking Allied forces did not continue fighting after the attack. Instead, they quickly turned around and retreated towards the Allied forces. Wang Ling hurriedly followed up on the electronic video, only to discover that the person who launched the night attack turned out to be Black Hawk fighter jet. Judging from the extent of damage to the ore refinery, only 4 Black Hawk fighter jets could have such power. However, the anti-aircraft guns built at the base during the day were also effective, and the Black Hawk fighter jets were shot down during the time they were traveling back and forth. Got 2 cars. The remaining 2 aircraft also had a hard time. The alarm just sounded, and all the troops in the entire base were awakened. The closest to the retreat route of the 2 Black Hawk fighter jets was Longgang's SEAL team. As a result, Longgang made a prompt decision and removed all the anti-aircraft tracks. All the vehicles were sent out, and the 2 remaining Black Hawk fighter jets were shot down halfway. Now, the 4 Black Hawk fighter jets that suddenly attacked at night all rushed into the street. Seeing this, Wang Ling breathed a sigh of relief, and then subconsciously looked at the electronic map again. Holy shit! But when he saw this, Wang Ling was startled and cursed inadvertently. Because from the electronic map, there are more than a dozen groups of blue light points, which are rapidly approaching here from different directions. When you look closer, they are all fighter jets, and there are even some Black Hawk fighter jets among them. The 4 Black Hawk fighter jets just now were just the vanguard, making a start. Looking at this posture, as long as there were fighter jets on standby in the Allied base, all of them were dispatched. Damn, why are these bastards so crazy? Wang Ling was stunned, but after calming down, he quickly jumped up and commanded all the anti-aircraft crawlers of the Wolf team to hold on to this part of the city, and even he himself was transformed into an elite anti-aircraft infantryman. Of course, what he discovered was also discovered by other teams and even the command post in the base. The whole base was boiling for a while, and then there were emergency dispatch orders to move all the anti-aircraft tracked vehicles of all the troops in the base. All were dispatched and arranged on various roads in the city. In the base, various orders were issued very quickly, and the action speed of each team was not slow. However, after all, when the anti-aircraft crawler vehicles were still moving and setting up defenses, the 4 fastest Allied invader fighter jets had already arrived. Arriving wildly. As luck would have it, the airspace they were trying to break into was exactly where the Wolf team was setting up defenses. The base command post was still in the reaction stage when Wang Ling led the team to set up defenses, but it had already been deployed now. As a result, the 4 invader fighter planes had just flown here, and all the anti-aircraft crawlers in the Wolf squad opened fire. Even Wang Ling joined in the fun. During the previous surprise attack on the Allied base, most of the anti-aircraft tracked vehicles did not belong to the Wolf squad. After returning to the base, they naturally returned to their respective teams. However, on this day, the base assigned a few more vehicles to the Wolf squad. Now there are 6 anti-aircraft vehicles in total. 2 of the tracked vehicles were elite level and 1 was veteran level. Coupled with Wang Ling, an elite air defense infantryman, the air defense force unleashed in that moment was quite powerful. The 4 intruder fighter jets could not withstand it for long. Were all shot down before even breaking into the inner areas of the city. The leading troops have arrived, and the follow-up fighter jets have naturally arrived one after another. Then 4 more invader fighter jets have arrived, but this time the anti-aircraft tracked vehicles deployed on the road have not yet arrived. That's it. Putting it inside the city, it soon broke into the central square, and the anti-aircraft guns built in advance opened fire immediately. The anti-aircraft artillery has a very high air defense efficiency, but it cannot withstand the ferocity of the 4 invader fighter planes. At the cost of 2 of them being shot down, the other 2 successfully dropped missiles and bombarded the flaming ore building at base number 15. On the refinery, it was blown up in an instant. The cost of doing so was not small. The 2 fighters failed to retreat out of the square area and were all shot down by anti-aircraft guns. Immediately afterwards, the next wave of intruder fighter planes came with great momentum. They also caught up with the area that had not had time to set up defenses and broke into the central square. As a result, all 4 fighter planes were shot down, and they dropped 2 missiles and bombarded 16 people. At the ore refinery at the base. The destructive power of the intruder fighter jets is naturally inferior to that of the Black Hawk fighter jets. These two missiles did not cause much damage, but they also destroyed about 3/4 of the ore refinery. The blood volume, if there are a few more waves, it may not be able to sustain it. And as these 4 invader fighter jets fell, subsequent fighter jets came in swarms. At this time, all the deployed air defense crawlers were basically in place, and an unprecedented fierce air defense battle immediately took place in the entire city. A large number of air defense crawlers opened fire collectively, attacking the Allied fighter jets in the air, causing them to be shot down in large swaths. But after all, these fighter jets were numerous and flying extremely fast. Even with this layer of anti-aircraft tracked vehicles, they could not intercept them all. A group of fighter jets still broke into the central square and were bombarded by anti-aircraft guns. After all, there were only a few fighter planes that the anti-aircraft guns could shoot down at once. Even though they were firing continuously, they only shot down 4 or 5 of them. The remaining fighters dropped missiles at the ore refinery without ceremony. It exploded almost instantly. Fighters in red alert can usually only fire 1 missile, and then return to the base air command center to replenish it. After blowing up the ore refinery, these fighter planes completed their mission and shot down the missiles, and immediately embarked on the return journey. However, on the way back, they were bombarded by anti-aircraft guns and a large number of anti-aircraft crawlers. In the end, only 3 of them were so pitiful that they could survive with residual health. The aircraft successfully flew out, and all the others fell into the city. One of the unlucky buildings was hit by a large number of fighter jets and was now on fire. And with the few remaining fighter jets escaping, this massive aerial attack finally came to an end. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 299. This night attack, it can be said that the Allied bases put a lot of effort into it. One of the bases was counted as 1, but all the fighter jets on standby were dispatched, but their targets were only aimed at 2 bases. It can be seen that because of the last attack by the Wolf Squad, the Allies really took good care of them. However, the result of this attack made Wang Ling laugh and cry. With such a large-scale air attack, it is entirely possible to blow up the command posts of the 2 bases, but the result is only to blow up the ore refineries of the 2 bases. This deal seems to be a bloody loss. How much are 2 ore refineries worth? If Wang Ling remembered correctly, the value of 2 invader fighter planes was already more than an ore refinery. But this time, when 2 ore refineries were blown up, all the Allied fighters were almost wiped out. Indeed, in the game, the Allies have this habit of sending fighter jets to bomb ore refineries to attack the enemy's economy. When Wang Ling was in the game before, the ore refinery was often destroyed before it started to develop. He was short of funds and could not develop. In the end, he had to admit defeat and quit the game. But that was only in the early stages of the game, which is very different from the current situation. The 2 bases were victorious from the previous battlefield. They also set aside a week to accumulate funds before moving, and dismantled and sold all the buildings except the command post. When they came to this decisive battlefield, they could bring enough development funds to rebuild the 2 bases. The ore refinery will not hurt the fundamentals at all. Sure enough, after the attack, the engineers from the 2 bases quickly began to rebuild the ore refineries. As for those armed mining vehicles, they are still the same, except that after mining the minerals, they just park aside when they return to the base. After the ore refinery is rebuilt, large quantities of ore can be injected. What's going on with the Allies? Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help but muttered, a group of fighter jets, 2 ore refineries. Are they burned out? Or do you have money that you have nowhere to use? According to the behavior of the Allies in the Red Alert game, it is really possible that they were deliberately harassed because they had nothing to do. However, when it comes to this situation, it is difficult for Wang Ling to associate it with having nothing to do. After much deliberation with no result, Wang Ling took a final look at the electronic map and found no more movements from the Allied forces. Then he shook his head helplessly, told the troops to return to their positions, and continued to rest in shift. However, after this round of large-scale airstrikes, Wang Ling couldn't sleep well. Not only him, but other teams are basically in the same situation. The soldiers are relatively easy to talk to, but those captain-level figures are also restless. This attack by the Allies has at least achieved the effect of harassment. Finally, I got through the night successfully. When I woke up the next day, most of the captains in the base, including Wang Ling, were yawning. Obviously they hadn't slept well. However, if a fight really breaks out on the battlefield, there will be masters who can fight all night long. This night's harassment will obviously not have much impact on them, at least it will not affect the battle. After the crazy air raids at night, the base seemed to be a little sensitive. Not only did they rebuild the ore refinery, they also built a spare one. They even built some anti-aircraft guns inside and outside the base overnight, and made a more than 10 anti-aircraft tracked vehicles were assigned to various garrison teams. With the addition of these air defense forces, if an airstrike of the same scale last night were to happen again, it would be difficult to reach the ore refinery. After the air defense force has been built, ground defense will follow. The engineers are working hard to build magnetic storm coils and sentry guns. The sentry cannon is okay, but the magnetic storm coil is relatively troublesome, and you can't build a few in a day. Taking advantage of the gap in building defensive buildings, many engineers built large-scale walls around the city, leaving only a few entrances and exits. Once all these defense measures are completed, the base's defense strength will be even higher. If the Allies want to invade, they will have to be prepared to be beaten severely. Of course, because of General Bob's order, the Allies are now paying special attention to the Allied forces base number 15 and number 16. Since there are still 5 other base garrison supports here, there is no large-scale invasion. But obviously they don't want to just watch these 2 bases develop. Just when the city wall was being built halfway, troops from 2 Allied bases suddenly appeared on the outdoor battlefield. A total of about 40 Allied soldiers rushed towards the 15th and 16th in a mine near the base. A concentrated fire attacked 2 armed mining vehicles here. This armed mining vehicle was also equipped with a machine gun. When it was attacked, it continued to mine minerals while moving the machine gun to start a counterattack. The armor and health of the mining truck are surprisingly high, no worse than the Apocalypse tank. However, before the upgrade, the firepower of the machine gun was slightly worse. The 2 armed mining trucks fought back together, and it took a long time to kill 5 Allied soldiers. But after all, these Allied soldiers were numerous in number. 5 of them were killed without losing their vitality at all. Instead, they took advantage of this period to beat one of the armed mining trucks to a pulp. The armed mining vehicle, which had lost its health, obviously didn't want to continue fighting, so it turned around and wanted to leave. But after all, the coalition forces do not have the ability to move across time and space. If the armed mining vehicles want to retreat, they can only drive away step by step. However, the vehicle with residual health would move slower. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Allied soldiers quickly deployed and immediately increased their firepower. In a few breaths, they blew up the armed mining vehicle with residual health, and then began to gather again. The fire attacked another vehicle, eventually blowing it up with the death of 2 people. After successfully annihilating the mine carts in this mine, this group of Allied soldiers did not give up and quickly moved to another mine, hoping to continue attacking the Alliance mine carts. While they were moving, these Allied bases could no longer sit still. They worked overtime all night to make several fighter jets. After the Allied soldiers won the first battle, they pursued the victory. The newly completed fighter jets were once again popular. He flew out of the base and headed straight for the 15th and 16th Allied forces. After suffering the losses last night, both Wang Ling and the commander were now paying attention to the movements of the Allied forces. When these fighter jets were dispatched, they immediately locked them in, and then hurriedly deployed anti-aircraft crawlers, which were even more expensive than the temporary deployment last night. It is much stricter. It is difficult for these fighter jets to fly in. However, the result was somewhat beyond everyone's expectations. This group of Allied forces seemed to know that attacking the ore refinery would not hurt the Allied forces, so they simply changed their target this time and aimed at the armed mining vehicles leaving the two bases. The result was, after the bombing, 6 armed mining vehicles were directly bombed. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 300. Under normal circumstances, armed mining vehicles have high health and armor. Even if 4 of the Allied invader fighter jets are deployed together, it will take 2 or 3 rounds to blast one. However, no matter how hard they are, they can't withstand the large number of these fighter jets. Dozens of them were dispatched at one time, and 6 of them were blown up. This is because they come from different Allied bases, and they do not cooperate with each other tacitly. Some targets overlap and the missiles are wasted. Otherwise, more armed mining vehicles will suffer. The Allies were smarter this time, and their methods were ruthless enough. Boom! In the command post of the number 15 coalition base, Major General Li Wiki witnessed the whole situation. He was so angry that he punched the control panel and cursed through gritted teeth, "Are these damn guys having a seizure? Send out all the fighter jets." What ended up being blown up was an armed mining truck. It's no wonder he was so angry. Who wouldn't be happy with this kind of thing? The relocation of the base brought a lot of armed mining trucks, and a few more were made during this period. The two bases combined have a lot of mine trucks, but there is a limit to how many more. No one can withstand such an explosion. 6 mine carts were destroyed in this round of bombing. If there are a few more mine carts, how many mine carts will be left in the base? You can't spend all the money on building armed mining vehicles, right? Although the attack last night destroyed 2 ore refineries, after all, the Allied fighter planes suffered more losses, so it is not something to be angry about, but like this time, the target was hit on the mine car, and the explosion was so there are many mine carts, but the Allied fighter planes have not suffered any losses at all, which is of course annoying. Just when Major General Li Wiki was angry, the remaining nearly 40 Allied soldiers had moved to another mine and continued to block the mine car that had just escaped the disaster and was still mining ore. Damn it, you've gone too far. Pass the order and have the Eagle Squad send troops to kill those bastards, immediately, immediately. Yes. Major General Li Wiki became angry. With an order, the Eagle Squadron that was originally stationed rushed out under the leadership of Chen Tong. Of course, it was not just the mining trucks at Base 15 that were bombed. Base 16 was also bombed. General Luo Er was also angry. As a result, the Firefox Squad received the order almost at the same time and sent troops together with the Eagle Squadron. Attack the group of Allied soldiers. On the previous battlefield, Chen Tong planned to attack the Allied forces. During the attack, the former captain of the Firefox Squadron died. At that time, he was only temporarily handed over to Sun Chiming to lead. During this time, Major General Luo Er had already assigned a captain to take up the post. The captain's name was Qin Ming, a wise and calm captain. Wang Ling had also interacted with him during the week of rest. After all, the armed mining vehicle was attacked, so the location was naturally relatively close to the coalition base. Not long after the two teams rushed out of the base and marched quickly, they collided with the harassing coalition team and exchanged fire without saying a word. After all, This group of Allied troops was used for harassment. The overall battle was not strong. Two strong coalition forces came out together. Both the number of soldiers and the overall combat effectiveness were much higher than them. As a result, this battle, in an almost crushing manner, nearly 40 Allied soldiers were wiped out before they could hold on for long. Now the Allied fighter jets have retreated and the harassing troops have been wiped out, but the base is obviously still on fire. After the Eagle Squad and the Firefox Squad wiped out the harassing troops, they received temporary orders and quickly approached the Allied mines closest to here. A retaliatory attack launched the Allied chronospace mining vehicle. Seeing this scene from the electronic map, Wang Ling was a little stunned. Only now did he understand why the decisive battle between the two sides turned into a tug-of-war and a large-scale attack. Neither side was prepared. Now this is simply retaliation and interest collection. In any case, base number 15 and number 16 were dragged into the tug-of-war. Wang Ling also expressed some helplessness about this. After all, even if it were him, he would be willing to take revenge. In the next few days, the Eagle Squad and the Firefox Squad were a bit busy. They were always rushing around the major mining factories. Whenever they saw the Allied space-time mining truck, they would go up and fight, although most of them were overtaken by them. They escaped through time and space and fled back to the base, but many unlucky ones were also blown up. During this period, of course, the Allies could not continue to let them attack like this, and sent troops many times to exterminate them. But whether it is the Eagle Squad or the Firefox Squad, they are a whole squad unit, which is completely different from those cannon fodder troops. It is impossible to fight with them. If you can crush them, just give them a few shots. If you can't win for a while, they simply turned around and retreated, and the Lightning Team, Fire Team, and other teams went to support them. After annihilating the enemy, they continued to sweep away the various hyperdimensional mining vehicles. It's no wonder that the battle is so stalemate. The Allies are so shameless. During this period, they dispatched 2 fighter groups in a row. A dozen armed mining trucks were blown up. Who wouldn't be angry if they replaced them? However, after going back and forth like this for several days, Wang Ling couldn't sit still anymore and contacted the command post via radio. "General, Brother Zhao, there is no way he can do such a sneak attack. Team Eagle and Firefox, although the team is not bad, the layout here is too big after all. It is really dangerous for them to wander outside all the time, and the results are very little." General Li Wiki immediately responded, "Indeed, I also have this concern, but if you are beaten, you have to fight back, right?" However, King Xiaoming knew Wang Ling best and asked quickly, "You said that, do you have some bad idea?" "That's right." Wang Ling shrugged his shoulders, and then told him his bad idea. After listening to this, Rovitsky was a little shocked. "You still have this kind of operation? It just makes you play new tricks. The Allies must hate you to death." General Li Wiki burst into hearty laughter. "Why didn't I think of that? It's not like I've never done this before. However, the battlefield for this decisive battle was so big that I didn't think about it for a while. But now that I think about it, I really have to do this." After coming up with the plan, General Li Wiki immediately contacted Major General Luo Er and told him this bad idea, which made General Luo Er burst into gloating laughter. Subsequently, the two commanders each contacted their own harassment troops and transferred them back to the base. Then, the tank factories at the two bases became busy. They temporarily stopped all production of tanks and concentrated on making terrifying robots. In just one day, the two bases produced nearly 40 robots. A scary robot. 40 units. This large group of terrifying robots lie in the base, which looks terrifying. After all the terrorist robots were in place, the two commanders waved their hands, and all the terrorist robots were dispatched, evenly distributed to all the mines on the battlefield of the decisive battle. I'm finally done with my work. I've been busy these days with my classmates getting married. It's quite emotional that classmates who haven't seen each other for many years can get together. As for who is getting married, well, one of Wang Ling's roommates in the novel is named after him.